So, welcome to the Git tutorial series. The first thing I want to talk about is just normalizing what our understanding of Git is and what it is not. So there's Git, the distributed version control system, and to install it, this series of tutorials will be going through from command line, which in my opinion is for me is my favorite way of doing it, because I can do things very quickly and with absolute control and certainty. Whereas I feel when I'm using a GUI or a graphical user interface on top of Git, I feel like I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. I don't feel like I'm in control, and it feels like I'm guessing at stuff. I don't like guessing at things. So the place to install command line Git, and also a great place to learn things, git-scm. There's your download just there. Now, this is different to GitHub, which I'm sure you've heard of. People tend to mistake GitHub with Git. So GitHub, maybe as its name suggests, is something to do with Git, but it's a place where people store their Git code, and it can be used as an open source library, documentation, that sort of thing. So it's a hub of people using Git, and they offer Git hosting. So they've got a Git container, many of them, behind the scenes, so you can store your stuff, your Git work, in GitHub. So they're a provider. Same thing for Bitbucket. Both very good companies. Bitbucket has like a very big user base and history, and their software is very nice. And Bitbucket, why I started using them, and they're great as well, Atlassian, if that's how you pronounce them, I hope so. But I started using Bitbucket because they had free private repositories, whereas GitHub, I believe, the last time I looked, which was a few years back, it required you to be a public repository. And so yeah, both valid vendors. But the point I wanted to highlight was GitHub is not Git. And another important thing I'd like to point out is when you get stuck, where are we? My favorite documentation source is, I'm just looking for it. You can usually visually identify it in this format. But the kernel.org, it looks very dry for documentation. It looks like, I might run a mile from this. But I've always found it to be the best, most comprehensive and intuitive documentation, which is surprising given its format. It looks quite old school. But kernel.org, I'm not sure whether that's affiliated with Linus Torvalds, but he built Git. And then, so I assume this is documentation from him or his team. That's a big assumption. Anyway, this is my favorite place to read Git documentation. Git.scm, the website I just showed you, has decent documentation, like good. And also Atlassian has very good tutorials, because their products support Git, so it's in their interest for you to understand Git and use Git, hence they've documented it. I haven't gone through tons of their stuff, but the pages that I've seen have been intuitive and made sense. But these are just some of the resources I found to be helpful in building software using Git. So the rest of the series will be walking through simulated developer environment with multiple users doing stuff in Git, and so it'll be a multi-part series. Hopefully it's of use to you, and enjoy.